All right, let's get into a story that starts out simple enough. You know, a long drive, the promise of a brand new life. But as we're about to find out, sometimes the most straightforward plans can take a truly terrifying detour, especially when you're exhausted and you're desperate for just any place to rest. I mean, really think about it. You've been on the road for hours, it's the middle of the night, and you're just bone tired. Then you see a sign. It's pointing down some dark, unfamiliar road, but it promises a place to stop. Would you take that chance? Well, for one couple, making that exact choice kicked off a night that they would never, ever be able to forget. But before we get to that dark highway, we really have to understand why they were on it in the first place. This is the story of Samar and Ayushi and their dream, a dream that was kind of flickering out under the harsh, bright lights of Mumbai. So, to really get a picture of their journey, you have to get their situation. Samar, he'd been trying to make it as an actor for 15 long years. 15 years of struggle. Ayushi, though, she'd had a taste of success. She was a TV actress, and she'd done well enough to buy her own apartment. But after they got married, the industry producers just stopped calling. They told her she'd lost her look, and just like that, her career faded away.
They were just completely burnt out. Imagine, living in the very city where all your dreams were born, but now it just feels like it's haunted by your past failures. They felt like their whole vibe, their energy, it just didn't belong there anymore. So they made a huge decision. They were gonna leave it all behind.
And you know, they had a really solid plan. This wasn't just some spur-of-the-moment thing. They were heading to Hyderabad. They had friends there, a support system, and Samar actually had a pharmacy degree. So opening a medical store, it was a smart, stable plan for a new life. They packed everything up, sent the big stuff with movers, and got in their own car for the long drive.
And this is where our story really begins. Out there on the road, driving through the night. Everything they owned was either in a truck somewhere up ahead or crammed into the car with them. They were hopeful, for sure, but they were so tired. So here's how the night played out. They left Mumbai around 5:30 in the evening. About 4 hours later, they pull over at a dhaba for dinner. And because they were just wiped out from all the packing and driving, they ate way too much. You know that feeling, right? A heavy meal after a long, exhausting day, it's just a recipe for disaster. By 1 in the morning, Samar, who was the only one who felt comfortable driving on the highway, was literally starting to nod off. And right at that moment, when they were about to just give up and pull over on the shoulder, they see it. A single, solitary sign glowing in the total darkness. The sign said exactly what they needed to hear. Restroom, hotel. An arrow pointed off the main road, down this little unpaved path into what looked like a thick, dark jungle. Of course, they checked Google Maps. Nothing. Not a single thing. But Samar tried to reason it out, you know? Hey, maybe it's too nude to be on the map, or maybe it's so old it was never added. He figured a little path like this couldn't go on for that long. It had to be close. It was a gamble, yeah, but it felt a whole lot safer than falling asleep behind the wheel on the highway. So, they made the turn. Now here's a detail that becomes absolutely critical. Ayushi had this condition. She would feel really suffocated in a closed car, almost like she was going to pass out. Because of that, their car windows were open. So as they're driving down this dark, creepy path, every little sound from the jungle, a twig snapping, leaves rustling, it felt like it was happening right inside the car with them. After a drive that felt way longer than it should have, they finally saw it. But that feeling of relief they were desperate for, nope. It was instantly replaced by this heavy, deep, and really unsettling silence. They had driven 5 kilometers down that dirt road to find this massive resort. But the parking lot was empty. Not a single car or truck, nothing. Inside, they found the manager passed out drunk on the floor. They couldn't wake him up. So they start checking the guest rooms, these little villas on the property. And every single door was locked up tight. I mean, what do you even do at that point? They were just exhausted, defeated. They figured, well, at least the hotel grounds are gated, it's private property. So they made the call. They decided to just recline their seats, pull the little privacy curtains they had on their windows, and try to get a few hours of sleep right there in the car. They finally conked out, deep in an exhausted sleep, around 2 in the morning. But they weren't alone for very long. That little safe spot they thought they'd found, It was about to be invaded in the most terrifying way imaginable. It was the sound of voices, not talking, but whispering. A low, heavy whispering right next to the car. And in the dead silence of that completely deserted place, you couldn't miss it. They both snapped awake, their hearts just hammering in their chests. Samar, trying to be brave, slowly, carefully, peeled back the curtain on his driver's side window. He looked out, saw nothing but pure darkness. He kind of gave Ayushi this look like, it's okay. And then, she reached over to the curtain on her passenger side window, and she pulled it back. And it was right there, a man's face, smashed against the glass. His eyes were huge, just wide open, not blinking, and his mouth was stretched into this bizarre, awful, unnatural smile. He wasn't saying anything. He was just staring. They screamed. Of course they screamed. Samar fumbled with the keys, the engine roared, and he just slammed the car into reverse. They tore out of that place, peeling out onto that narrow road, not even daring to look back. But escaping the hotel, that wasn't the end of their nightmare. Oh no, it was only the beginning.
They finally fishtail back onto the main highway, and for a second, they think they're safe. But maybe a kilometer down the road, the car starts feeling wrong. It's slowing down, even though Samar has his foot on the gas. Ayushi leans out her window and just sees this horrifying sight. Their back tire wasn't just flat, it was shredded, torn to pieces, barely hanging onto the wheel. They had no choice. They had to stop.
And as they sat there, stranded in the dark, they realized they were being chased. On Samara's side, running right next to the car, was the man from the hotel. And on Ayushi's side, there was a woman. But the truly terrifying part? They had no eyes, just empty black sockets, and their mouths were stretched wide open in a silent, endless scream as they just ran, effortlessly keeping pace with the car. In that moment of just absolute terror, they knew these things were not human. Every logical thought, every rational plan just evaporated. The only thing they had left was faith. Something just snapped inside Ayushi. She rolled down her window, looked right at that screaming woman, and she started chanting the Hanuman Chalisa. It's this incredibly powerful Hindu prayer for protection, just screaming it at the top of her lungs. And unbelievably, the female creature started to slow down and then just fell away behind them. Seeing that, Samara started chanting too, and a few moments later, the man also just stopped and vanished into the night. They kept driving on that ruined tire, the metal rim just grinding and screaming against the road, until finally they saw lights. It was a group of truckers, pulled over for the night. They found safety. You know, this all happened back in 2018. Samar and Ayushi, they didn't make it to Hyderabad. They started their new life. But that night is still burned into their minds. And because of it, they made a promise to each other that they have never, ever broken. They will never travel by road at night again. And that is the terrifying story from the Hyderabad haunted highway. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? We drive these same roads all the time, but what happens after the sun goes down? What other secrets are hiding out there in the darkness, just waiting beyond the reach of our headlights?